And hello and welcome to another happiness class. Thank you for joining us. I just want to give you a quick intro about what's going on. Usually, this conversation is in the wonderful Speaker's Corner, the world famous Speaker's Corner, but I'm on holiday here in the Middle East in Jordan, so we're continuing the cycle a little bit every week. Just to keep things going. It's not as amazing as being in Speaker's Corner, but we're still going. So let me just tell you three things. First of all, what is this about? It's these happiness classes, they're weekly and they discuss personal to global issues, because I think all of that stuff affects our happiness, like relationship issues all the way to environmental issues. You can't be happy if your planet's being destroyed. The second point is it's all of these shows are part of a comprehensive happiness course. I call it comprehensive. I've tried to make a really comprehensive list of all the personal to global issues that affect most people. I think pretty much all people. So do check out the description where you'll find a link to the website bigquestionsanswer.com to see that course, and you can see all the previous shows. This week's show is about unity. The main topics is going to be the first 15 minutes, and then we're going to go through a whole bunch of other interesting questions. And those questions are, starting from the beginning, searching for paradise, ? What's that got to do with unity? I think unity is central to finding or creating paradise. And I'll give it a bit more of an intro in a minute when I get started with that question. Second question is, atheism scientific? This is me trying to make YouTube friendly bite-sized titles. So atheism scientific means, is atheism scientific? And we'll have that discussion. Number 3 is, why does America ban books? And the last one, number 4, is the Church of England addicted to oil? So again, if you want to find out more, go to bigquestionsanswer.com. The link's in the description. Loads more cool stuff like written answers that I give and stuff in the description. Do check that out. Timestamps as well, blah, blah. Now, last thing I'd like to say before we get everybody introduced is, do get involved. The reason why we have it in Speaker's Corner is we love the involvement. We want to hear people. We want to have a really comprehensive, discussion and hear all different points of view. So we can't do that because we're not in Speaker's Corner, but do that in the comments. Do join in as much as you like. Promote the show, press the like button as well, subscribe, blah, blah. Let's go through everybody. I'll quickly start with myself. My pigeonhole might be that I'm a Muslim. I think that's kind of where I get my answers from. And so that's the key thing that I would like to describe myself by. Let's go round according to my screen. So Dust, could you introduce yourself whichever way you like?
Well, thank you very much. My name is, as just said, is Dust. I'm a professional speaker at Speaker's Corner. I've been going there for about 6 years, and agnostic by nature, and agnostic by intellectual output, meaning just simply that I approach reality with the understanding it's human beings that frame and shape and define it. And the idea of a God is too big a concept for my teeny little brain to be able to even begin to comprehend.
Yes, Martin, your turn.
What? Okay. Well, my name's Martin. I would say atheist agnostic is an approach to where I am at the moment in the world. I have a little bit of Satanism just for fun. And yeah, I don't know, I see the world as not doomed, as something that can be fixed however bad things get. There's always the opportunity to make it better. Every day is a new opportunity to fix the world a little bit. And if you only have one life, then you've got to try and make the world better before you leave. I don't know. Go with that. That's not a bad start.
Ooh, good. And then you've got my son Saleh. How would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Saleh. That's about it.
Well, one thing I like to say about Saleh, and you can correct me, is that you shouldn't think that he will be agreeing with me just because he's my son and he's brought up with the same religious perspective. I think he quite enjoys, and I think probably possibly, I'm not sure if I'm exaggerating, but he often gives the most sound and robust answers against some of my opinions that I've heard. So, Sada, your logo is showing whatever that is, a cat machine gunning people or something. Can you? I can't. Why is your picture gone?
What?
Yeah, your picture's gone. Oh, okay, now
I
it's
don't
come
know.
back. Oh, it's gone again. All right. I think it's just a thing that happens. Everybody's logos were just showing for a second. Let's get started. All right, so we've done the intros. First question is searching for paradise. Are you searching for paradise? And that is the reason why I posed that question is
No, no.
partly a reminder that these discussions are not these purely boringly academic discussions. We really do want to make the world a better place. And why I've brought it up especially today is because I think unity is fundamental and we've lost that the value of unity because we've been taught, we've had this idea of individualism drummed into our heads that we've lost the sense of unity, which is so powerful in creating happiness. So, and one of the things I like to say is that although I come from a religious or Muslim point of view, I think it's pointless almost if I don't express the scientific or psychological backing to what I'm saying. So, first of all, psychologists will tell you that connection is incredibly important to human happiness. There's all sorts of connection, but connection between people is fundamental. So that's why one reason why unity is incredibly important for our happiness, and we can see that one of the biggest killers today, it sounds amazing or crazy, in the West is loneliness. How can loneliness be a biggest killer? But somehow it is because it has physical effects on us, like stress and feeling alone and all sorts of kind of peripheral effects it has on us after having the feeling of being lonely. So that tells you something about how incredible it is for us to be together. Okay, but the other really important thing that is important, and this is from my understanding, from my studies of the psychological findings, this is really interesting, which is I think it's the opposite of what we think of ourselves in the West, is that we don't really listen to people with different opinions. We think we do, but not from the psychological findings. And I do find that here you would think in the Middle East everybody's fighting according to the BBC, but you have people with completely opposite points of view and different religions, and we discuss and we joke, and it doesn't matter. I remember I was in a school. I'm not going to go into long stories now, but we were just playing table tennis in a school run by some Christians, and the priest who did the religious education studies, and he was an amazing table tennis player. And then some other guy who was Christian, he said, "Let's do Christians versus Muslims." And you could never say that in England because you're so careful and. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, whatever. It's like he was just doing it as a joke sort of thing. What I mean to say is that we don't realize how segregated we are in the West, and we like to think we're all open-minded in that, but we're really far from it from the statistics. So, and when you have that discussion, because we're more united as human beings, more ideas flow, and we learn from each other, and we desperately need to learn from each other because, especially in terms of happiness, because we're certainly missing something with depression levels shooting up. And I think I'm going to try to say a tiny bit more. I know I've gone a little bit long, but I want to talk about a solution, but I'm going to try to say it in a few seconds sort of thing. So there's a beautiful saying from Prophet Muhammad, which is guiding what my answer is in this thing. And it says, you'll not have paradise, which is basically happiness in this life and in the next, until you have faith. And you will not have faith until you love each other. Shall I show you something that if you did, you would love each other? And then the answer was, spread the greeting of peace between yourselves. And when you do the greeting, you have to shake hands. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that starting to build a connection can have a knock-on effect to create unity and love and much greater happiness. I think I'll leave it there for now. Let's go around the same circles we did with the intros. Any thoughts? Dust.
Well, thank you for that, what you just touched upon, because it's so important about this connection and about human beings not being isolated from our communities, which is dominant in the West. I mean, it is horrific how capitalism has normalized this idea that if you're not in a pub drinking or at a football pitch shouting or anything, not much from that sphere of understanding and reality, then there's something wrong with you and you don't deserve any space to exist as a human being or to a human being to create yourself. So yes, it's this connection, and I think that connection is a profoundly beautiful thing, profoundly beautiful, but it is something that's like any artwork in this world that we have. It takes time to learn, to understand, and it's a process every day that we have to apply ourselves to, and we do get better, but we're always going to be, someone's going to always be more nervous, and no matter how much energy or creative they are. And it's quite intriguing that this connection that we brought up, because the question that I'll be bringing up in a moment beautifully dovetails into this about understanding over human beings. And I'll be proposing later in my question how banning books in schools is breaking down that connection deliberately. But I'll bring that up in my question. But yeah, I think one of the great ways of connection is through school, youth clubs, and art places and churches, and also any religious infrastructure as well. I think that's all adds to the unique tapestry that we can all tap into and become and develop and grow as individuals, and also collectively as a multicultural goal and dream.
Cool, thank you for that. Martin, any thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Like, obviously unity and all that is vital to us as human beings, obviously, because we thrive better together than apart. We know that from an evolution scientific basis. But I can only sort of, I mean, I agree with Doss was saying that. I think where I've sort of seen glimpses of like this energy that sometimes you see, like if you've ever been like right in the middle of a really good band that are playing. I can talk from like a musician's kind of side of things. It's like, say there's 100 people in the room, and politically they may all be completely different people. Philosophically, they're all completely different people. Like at Speaker's Corner, they might want to go rah 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 at each other, but you know, when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you start, and the music starts, all that division that could potentially be there has gone, and there's an energy in the room. And for the next 3.5 minutes that you're playing that song, we're all together. And if you could, I don't know if you could take that energy and put that more out in the world, it would break through so many different prejudices and stupid bad information that just turns people each other. You can look at things like Woodstock 1969, of course, amazing concert. Watch Freddie Mercury when he was they done the Live Aid, that one person could bring a whole entire stadium into one, I'm saying energy, I don't know what a better word is, one kind of channel of just good feeling, yeah.
Unity.
And it's that we need to tap into. It's that, you can just get one person playing a guitar and you get people to stop and look. And for a little moment there, the divisions are gone. And then they might come back again the next day when they read the news. But there's a good feeling there to kind of tap into some.
Yeah. So I think from my experience of traveling and travel videos that I watch, the best and the most happiest places are where people are more united or connected. And what I mean by that, maybe those are just big words. It's more like they just acknowledge each other when they go past each other. And the most miserable places, and I'll put London into what that category generally, is where people don't even make eye contact. It's like, don't smile, don't make eye contact, definitely don't say hello. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not being rude about London necessarily, because I'm a Londoner and I want Londoner to be better. I'm not just insulting for the sake of insulting. Like, we can do much better. So definitely, I think we're seeming to agree that unity and connection is some sort of it's an amazing feeling that we can get. The thing I want to drill down on a little bit, that you made an interesting point, Martin, is that you can feel connected and it's a feeling and it's a good feeling, but then the next day you could be disagreeing about just about everything. And I think that means we need to be beyond kind of a feeling within the music, and maybe the lyrics and the music may teach something useful, but we need to actually talk those ideas through. Like, let's say there's an amazing lyric or something, and that creates the unity. But if we don't talk about it and discuss it, and to what extent do we agree, like have a discussion, then I don't think it's powerful enough for a long-term solution. What do you think, Martin, before I move on to Salo?
I think, well, when I say music, I mean it's like a building block. It's like the potential to see a chance to go further, and then you can build from that. I wouldn't say it's like a absolute solution for everything, but it's a start. It's just where
exactly.
And if you can get people normally that would want to really argue with each other into a room and go, look, we can all be perfectly nice people. Like, see, there is something that binds us together. We all love the opening to "We Will Rock You." We all want to clap along to our favourite songs. So we can put those differences aside for a little while. See, look, we are all just the same. We are all, pulled in by fear or misinformation and things like that.
Can I just quickly come in?
Yeah.
I think what you just brought up is extremely important, that we do need to discuss these ideas that we're joining onto and look into them. But I think for that requires an infrastructure, not like a university, just a place where people can go in the evening, like a speaker's corner, but that's actually roofed and in a community, and people can turn up and learn how to talk once they've learned how to talk, because talking isn't, as I was alluding to earlier,
100%.
Talking very complicated to do, but it's something very worthwhile and rewarding for everyone on the planet. But it does need a venue, and we do need infrastructure in our communities where we can discuss safely, freely, and with confidence to be heard.
Brilliant. So I got a couple of two points. I'm not going to say anything yet because I'm going to give Silo a chance. But there was a sense of, we need to develop this sense of love so that we can communicate, rather than hate, which is dividing us and stopping from discussing, because that's what I got from what Martin was saying about, like, you have this connection and unity from "We Will Rock You," whatever the song is, all that kind of stuff. And then Dust was saying about, you need some level of organization. This stuff doesn't happen by itself. So those are two interesting things I might want to drill down into later. But Sala, have you got any opinions on that generally, this stuff, and any opinions about how we can increase love so that we can communicate? What are your thoughts?
I think unison is good to a certain extent, but if it gets too much, then it can get rid of individualism. So if unison stays for too long, then people would start making up their own boundaries and start saying, "Oh, you can't cross that line, otherwise you're going to be by yourself," type thing. So I think unison is good, but not too much. Like otherwise, if it's too much, boundaries will be created.
Right, yeah, that's an interesting point that you don't want to be forced to conform to something. And I think we often go to I think we worry too much about, or maybe I'm not sure if we worry too much, but we can worry about the extremes when we're really far away from it. So let's just assume nobody's going to force anybody. This is all optional unity. Um, how can what, do you
Yeah, but then
agree?
you get peer pressured by the majority. Like
Oh,
nowadays, the majority has a bigger say than what the minority is.
that
So
is
people are being peer pressured into joining the majority. So it's just going to keep on growing.
that is a fascinating point. That's really interesting. And that is, I think, there's a strong reality behind that. So if you look in the Muslim community, I've heard this about the Jewish community. Any community that's really tight knit, there is a sense that even if it's not even said, that you feel you kind of have to go along with certain things. It's true, and I think with anything, you do have to keep working on giving people space. That is true, to think for themselves and do what they need to do. Yeah, that is a problem that does exist from what I've seen in different, very what I would describe as tight knit communities. But let's say we haven't got to. I think we're
We
struggling
have
as
got to this stage though, like in Western countries.
what
Like
unity.
there's
We've created unity in Western countries.
no, like to a certain extent, but more peer pressure unity. Like lots of groups are trying to cancel or ban other groups because they don't have the same views. So they're creating unity by
Yeah.
getting rid of the other groups.
That's very interesting. So, the kind of unity that I'm thinking of is more of a loving unity, and this is kind of the opposite of the unity you're talking about, which is tribal unity, which is one group against another. Often, if you're for the environment, you're against everybody else. And I'm thinking about, like, we're all supposed to be together, and how can we love the other person to talk to them nicely enough to win them over? What do you think about that? And then I'll pass it on to Dust.
Oh, there's not really saying one person's right, one person's wrong. So eventually there's gonna be a point where no one's gonna agree with the other side. So there has to be unison, but not everyone agreeing to the same thing, like different groups in unison, not just one group.
Okay. So my one thing I'm going to say before I pass it, because I want to talk about, yes, we need unity in some degree rather than fighting each other, and it makes us happier and it helps us learn from each other. But I don't want it to be just a theoretical idea. So I want to start on this idea of how do we build that unity, and you can tell me what you think about this, Dust, if it's a viable way. And this is actually an ancient way in all the different Abrahamic religions, which is simply when you come across somebody, you wish them well. You say peace be upon you. So in Judaism, you say Ashalom Aleichem. In Christianity, the English version is peace be upon you, and in Islam, you say Assalamu alaikum. It just means peace be upon you, and it's not an empty saying. It means, like, I promise not to do anything bad to you from my tongue, from my word, and it's genuinely wishing people well from your heart, right? And on top of that, you might shake hands. Now, why do I think this is like some really good solution? Is first of all, shaking hands releases oxytocin. That's a bonding chemical, bonding hormone. That has an effect by itself. But also, I just want to remind people that people want to be together, people want to be connected. So it's not actually a massive thing. So if you remind them, all this, like when you say something nice to somebody, hopefully, and you do it repeatedly, you start feeling good about it and remind you about the kind of person you want to be. And hopefully it will get you out of what I describe as zombie land, which is what we do in London. We're kind of like, don't look at the other person, don't smile, whatever. And we've had that taught to us culturally for so long that we think we're happier being lonesome individuals. But if you practice this kindness of just what's the word, kindness or love without exception, because that's one of the major problems we're suffering from, this tribalism. I only love you if you agree with me, sort of thing. We just need to get beyond that, and I think that first step is really powerful. What do you think? Just being loving to everybody as a first step to building unity. What are your thoughts?
Me?
Sorry.
Well, I just want to bring up the just highlight some points that have been brought up already. That we live in a society owned by people that think austerity in our culture is an absolute must, and austerity destroys communities, destroys people's ability to be able to understand and relate to each other, because they're constantly living in fear of not being able to pay their mortgage, not being able to feed their children, not to feed themselves, constantly live in fear, and the erosion of all the things that are necessary in a society for it to support, like the police, health, education, etc. And the news is pushing this idea that we should be hating each other. So this concept of isolation doesn't happen magically. It happens because of capitalism's direct policy to break society down and break communities down constantly, and leaving the individual broken and dependent on the capitalist to function and form as a human being. But so that's just bring up the point that your son brought up, which was incredibly important. Yeah, unity does not mean a blending of all cultures and ideas and concepts into one mass, which then owns the planet. No, the unity that I've been communicating and your dad's been communicating is where different ideas are allowed to function and not persecuted. But the unity comes in just not persecuting someone or punching somebody because they are a different colour, different religion, different sexuality, etc., etc., etc. That's where I come from, and I believe that's what this channel is also promoting. So it's not unity, we all become big one lump. That ain't ever going to happen, no matter how brilliant or balmy your idea is to link everyone together. It doesn't exist. People will always be individual, so let's bring the communities together and agree upon some basic respect for each other. So that's where I come from. I believe we all here are coming from. So I hope that sort of answers that question. Right, I'll hand it over to.
By the way, I've done a rubbish job in chairing this because we're already on half an hour. That's because I think I'm just enjoying it too much. I wasn't even looking at the time.
Yeah, I think sometimes when it's going so well, the conversation, it's so intriguing and oratory that just letting it roll.
Yeah, and I think we were too greedy in trying to put 4 questions in the hour. I think we need to tell ourselves off and say it can't be done, but maybe we'll try our best anyway.
Well, it could be more like backup questions if the first question doesn't roll naturally, because sometimes the question ain't going to roll naturally, and we've got backups. But
yes,
I'll hand it over to.
Yeah, I can try and add something to this, you guys. I do. So I think you're right. Like, so if you had, unity could be a bad thing. So you had like, because you create little echo chambers, don't you? You create little rooms where people we're all united in our one opinion, but we don't want to know the other side. They're all wrong. We're all right in our little pocket. So I think what you've got to do is, if you're, say, very left leaning, you need to expose yourself to more right wing ideas and talk to more people with right wing ideas, and vice versa, and do that, religions or politics or whatever ideas, because obviously the media like to play us against each other a lot of the time for their benefit. For newspapers, it sells more newspapers, it gets more clicks. We know how that all works, so we can go against that by so I like Speaker's Corner, deliberately throw yourself into this whole mix of ideas, because I champion people being individuals. That's why I share some of that Satanism. People being individuals, don't be a robot. I don't want to have the same ideas as everyone else. I'm an individual, but I also need to learn that if I want to learn how the other side think, I need to go and talk to them, and then I need to exchange ideas. So yeah, I think like unity could be bad if it was all left-wing people and all right-wing people, and you're like, we're all happy in our little camps. But overall, you need to step outside of your own little group and go, hang on, I'm part of something bigger.
Yes. So could I just ask you one question? That maybe that this can kind of.
I'm part of my whole community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I just ask? Could it be that we need love the thing that could unify us in the most healthy way? So love means you listen to different perspectives. You're interested in another perspective. Like you said, there's a bigger picture beyond myself that I want to help. That's the community. That's love again.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that love would be a really profound and powerful unifying factor in the most healthy way?
Yeah, I think love. It's a single thing, but love is more powerful than hate. It's more constructive. It's the thing that will put us through the worst things we as humans experience, like pandemics recently, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, all horrible things that are really brutal. It's love that pulls us through.
But it also
I think that's the best tool
each other as well.
as humans. Yeah. So, I mean, I could, for example, I could be at Speaker's Corner and there's someone speaking there that I absolutely hate their ideas. I completely disagree with their ideas, and I'll tell them I disagree with their ideas. But I have to think that's also a human being, and me just shouting them isn't going to achieve anything. I've got to have a dialogue and talk to them. So that love will conquer the initial anger and hate that I might have, because that's just an emotional response. It's not a rational. Rational would be, no, you need to talk calmly and have a conversation with someone. Emotional is screaming and shouting and then calling names and walking off, and you don't achieve.
Exactly.
Using reason, logical kind of ideas, understanding that if you want to learn about the other side, you need to talk to them, and you need to, because you can learn something from them, they can learn something from you, and you automatically become better off. You've learned something new,
Yeah, I feel like I could add a million things to what you just, because I agree with so much. Like when you learn something new, you're improving your understanding of the world, and that's going to make you a happier person, because happiness, I think, is a complicated thing, and you need the best map of the truth, as it were, as possible, and you do that by you keep learning. But I don't want to keep saying too much more about that. I would say go to the description where I try to write down whatever I thought about it as much as you can, and anybody who wants to suggest written descriptions of their answers to these questions, do give it to me in a web page, whatever, and I'll link it as well. Saleh, you have the last say. I'll let you. What do you want to say about this? I'm trying to wrap it up. We've got too much to talk about it, but what are your thoughts, Saleh?
I agree with most of the previous statement, but at the same time, there are lots of other things, a lot of other opinions that just obviously don't make sense, but they just if they get popular, then that's just going to cause more chaos. Like, even if you listen to others, they might not do the same back to you, even though if they're obviously wrong. So it's going to have a bad effect on you. of a person.
So I'm
And
not
then
sure if,
if
and
they're
I don't know if
yeah.
anybody's saying when you listen to them, you have to agree with them, but you have to at least be willing to entertain the other person's point of view, which is not happening enough, is what.
Yeah, but when you try to convince them with your thing afterwards, they might not want to listen. So you can't really get your point across, and then it's really one-sided. Then
I
no one's going to
agree, and I
benefit.
think that's incredibly powerful. I think Dust is going to say something about it, but I'll just say that that's again love, where you know that limit, where you can't force people to agree. But yes, Dust, what were you going to say? You have the last say. Go on.
No, sorry, I had a thought and it's not relevant. So
Oh,
sorry for
it might have been what I was going. Who knows? We do say a lot of the same things, but anyway, yeah. So I do think that is a really good point, Salo, where people don't necessarily listen to each other. The world's not suddenly going to change, but I do think, just to kind of round it off, that this is the way to create paradise on earth. I really do think I've seen it in so many ways where people just connect. We so desperately need it. People like you two, musicians, Dustin. Are you a musician, Martin? Then, from what you're saying,
Yeah, I play guitar and drums. So
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
music.
kind of we get this kind of euphoria of being connected. We know there's some truth in it, especially if you do travel a lot, where you see places where people are more connected. You just feel way more happier when you do that, when we have that. I'm going to move on to our next fascinating question. Is atheism scientific? So I think we're culturally told, this is my introduction, we're culturally told that if you want to be scientific, then by default you're not supposed to believe in God. That's the feeling that I get in London. Okay, and I would say nothing could be further from the truth scientifically or logically. Let me explain a little bit. So, in a nutshell, I would say what an atheist is, and again, I know we've got atheist friends here. This is not like anti an individual. This is about it's kind of two things. It's about the logic and also knowing there is an impact to our happiness, which I'll quickly touch on. Okay, so as in the idea of being an atheist, if you were to summarize it in my point of view, is to believe that there is organization in the universe, but not to accept that there is an organizer. And I don't think that's logical. And that's kind of very broadly talking about absolute miracles that are constantly in play that keep our very fragile bodies in existence. And we don't, because the machinery that makes the machinery called nature does it so beautifully and so smoothly, we don't recognize it. If it was doing a really bad job, but it still did its job, then we'll go, oh wow, I can see that massive crank pulling the clouds along and recycling our water. It's called the water cycle. Unless it's an insane job of recycling millions and millions of tons of water every day. It's an incredibly difficult thing we couldn't do. We'll be dead without all this different kind of machinery that's recycling our air, recycling our water, the perfect distance we are from the sun, the rotation of the earth. So it's kind of like a chicken on a spit, you know what I mean? Like it's evenly being roasted on all sides. Otherwise the earth would blow up, burn up in flames on one side and be ice cold on the other. So there's insane amount of things that it's just too impossible to believe that they happened by chance, and they had to work so perfectly. Like the I think it's called the cosmological constant, the speed at which the Big Bang happened is so perfect that if it was any different, it would be wrong, and the universe wouldn't exist. And you could just keep going on from the big universe, which is our universe, to the universes within our cells. They are so incredibly complicated, we don't really seem to realize that it's actually impossible for any of them to be made by any sort of accidental process. And now I've started going off and on and on and on. And one thing I want to quickly put out there, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about it, is that I believe in evolution. I just don't believe evolution is in any way accidental. And that's when I say I believe in evolution, that's an Islamic point of view, right from the beginning of the Quran, which is God creates things in stages. So I just don't want that misunderstanding to be there. Let's go in the usual direction. So Dust, please go for it.
Well, firstly, I mean, we just have a quick chat about time.
Yes.
Your first took a lot of time.
Yes. Sorry.
2 more things. I think I would have imagined it'd be we spend not too much time on this question now.
Okay. Yeah.
But you've rightly consumed quite a lot of time with the first one.
How long did I speak on that? Just one. It felt like a few seconds, but I bet it was ages.
I mean, that's the point. Is that I think we should just briefly touch upon this subject now.
Sure. Okay. We'll do 1-1-1, everybody, and then we'll get to the next one. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll quickly say that, the universe is so massive and so huge, and the time and distances are so vast, our brains just can't comprehend it. So in all this myriad of coincidences, it's going to look like, from a conscious entity that's evolved called humanity, that all this is somehow special and related to them. But in actual fact, there's billions of different stars, billions and eons of time, and in actual fact, what we're experiencing is just a very unique, niche moment in reality. And that unique, niche moment in reality has given us, and the beauty of our friends and our communities and which things we have developed. But fundamentally, because the universe is so vast, it is all completely random that we are who we are now. I mean, because it's so big, the universe is our galaxy alone has more stars in it than there is sand on the beaches of all the beaches in the world. Just think about when we run across the sand, how many particles there are. Each particle still doesn't add up to the amount of stars literally just in our galaxy, and there are not infinite, but almost an infinite amount of galaxies in our universe. So there's probably many other civilizations happening, many other people living and breathing and thinking, oh, I'm unique and special. And yes, of course you are, but not when it comes to the evolution aspect of reality and the physics. We are merely a coincidence built on a necessity to fit an environment to reproduce. And yeah, it's minimalizing it, but at the end of the day, I'm an artist, Martin's an artist, and why? So our moment here is so brief. Let's give all the love, energy, and art that I'm capable of, and hopefully you out there are capable of as well.
Yes, Martin, go for it.
Okay, so this was when I saw this question, I was like, I could go on about this stuff for hours because it's like my thing. I get why, like, I go to Speaker's Corner whenever I can, and certain things always come up over and over again, and I get why a God is an appealing source of answers. Why we created gods to answer questions. Those gods change. I watched a really good series about gods and mythology, which was really interesting, because those gods have changed over time from having like a whole load of Greek gods to going down to now there's just one god, and they always appealed to us, and they were always a comforting pillow in a sense, because they could kind of give us answers to big questions. Where did the universe come from? Where do we go? What's the point in life? All those kinds of things. And I think, I don't know if we'll ever escape that, really, because of the way we are as human beings, we're always questioning the things. I would wonder why, if we were so special, we'd be put on this planet if we're also so dangerous as an animal. We're very dangerous. we create nuclear bombs. Like elephants don't create nuclear bombs. Like, we're very
You
dangerous.
say clip-ons, or maybe the sound isn't. Say
Sorry?
clip-ons? What did you? I'm not sure if I heard what you said. You're saying something like
Nuclear
clip-ons. Sorry.
Nuclear
I was just-
bomb.
Oh, nuclear bombs. I got it. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I was just sort of saying, why would if you create such a perfect world, would you put humans on it, knowing that we can potentially destroy it? We're very dangerous.
Yeah.
But we're and I understand how it looks perfect. It looks like we're supposed to be here. Like the planet's just right. We just have the ability to survive on this planet, but it's also an incredibly dangerous planet. And if we go to certain parts of the planet, we'll die from the heat. If we go to certain other parts, we'll die from the cold. Most of it's water that we can't live in. That we'll just, but I kind of lost my thread now.
No, I get what you're saying though. Yeah.
But I was just going to kind of say that I think when it comes to atheism, it's embracing a lot of science and understanding that science is the best tool in our toolbox, that we have to understand where we've come, where we're going, and how we can improve the journey along the way, or try and fix things when we make mistakes and things. There's lots of answers. Stuff none of us here will ever understand the answer to, or generations later may never understand how the universe started. But science is the best tool we have to get to that answer. We don't have anything else that will get us to that answer.
I agree, totally agree that we should not just have our religious point of view, which is not backed up by science. 100% agree. And there's so many great points I'm not going to answer, but I will say, do check out the description, and I'm going to probably add to my answer based on what both of you said so far. Saleh, you have the last say. Go for it.
I think there's a point to atheism to a certain extent, because humans need science to understand stuff. It's basically a bunch of equations that we made to give reasons to stuff. And the water cycle, you don't just find it in religion. You use science to find out how the water cycle is done and stuff like that. So I think science is our way of understanding how things have come to be, stuff like that. So it's made to be understandable in human terms. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to understand it if you just thought about it normally.
Okay, I think I enjoy what you're saying there. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying basically follow the science. Are you saying that about?
No, I'm saying humans use science to translate stuff. It's like an equation. It's like bid mass. You use bid mass in maths, yeah.
Okay.
But for other stuff, like science stuff, you use science.
Okay.
Because it helps you understand it better.
Right. So there's so much information in the word, and you're using science to understand it. Great. Okay. Cool. And the last thing I'm not going to really add to it, but it's going to say in the answer I'll be giving is why all atheism or discussing this is so fundamental to happiness. Psychologists have talked about it for a very long time, and there's kind of a lot of agreement on this. So do check out the description below. We're having way too much fun. We've got to move on to the next question. It's going to go way beyond the hour, but let's just go for it. Why does Dust? You introduce the question.
Why are American schools banning books? That seems so horrific and a concept that's actually happening in America. I mean, there's a lot of horrific things happening in America right now. That's nothing to do with Americans, of course, but these events nevertheless are manifesting powerfully in America. We had the Nazis in World War II who were burning the books, and it's very important to mention this, the reasoning Nazis were burning books was to stop what we've been talking about from manifesting. Literally, our last hour of discussion and agreement in for a lot of it happens in books. Books are written to describe each other, to describe ourselves and our community, our justification in our lives. And learning another human being happens through a lot of literature. That's why a lot of literature is written, because simply from the point of view of seeing the world from an individual's point of view who has no voice, but with literature they can manifest a voice describing their personal life, their reflections, ideologies and conflicts that happen not only internally but externally as well. So I'm going back to the point now. Nazis burnt books to stop that communication from happening. They weren't just burning random books, they were burning books about how people talk about lives. And in America, they're using the same philosophy to ban books in school. So what are the main books being banned in school? Books about slavery, about how black communities in America for the last 300-400 years have been horrifically abused. They're banning those books from a person's point of view of their life in a community they have no relationship with whatsoever and experience persecution on a day in, day out. That's not leading to happiness. And the LGBTQ community, their books have been banned in schools, not because it's some graphic interaction with their lives, but it's because what the books have been banned are having normality that you can have people in the gay community live, love, and contribute dramatically and brilliantly and beautifully to the community. So this is the books that are being banned, and it's done by the same people, which are the Catholic leadership, not the Catholics, but the Catholic leadership in Germany. They were the ones that burning the books. They are the Nazis, and they're doing exactly the same thing in America right now. And if we do not have people learn in our schools how other human beings that look like them but have different lives, that are just not dangerous to anyone or inflicting pain or hatred, they're not learning about these lives, then they appear to be alien, disconnected, and anything that we don't understand, of course, we fear. And fear, of course, does not lead to happiness. It leads to violence, horrific attacks on niche groups, be it Muslim, be it Christians in Muslim communities, or vice versa, or Jewish people, attacks on them, like in World War II. So the very thing that should enlighten us as school is, in fact, in America right now, being repressed and not literally burnt, but it might as well be, because without in our childhood is when we learn the most. If you don't learn anything, you become this mono understanding of reality, and you become vulnerable. There's no agency in that, and there's no understanding of these communities that we would have been talking about. And loneliness and hatred leads to violence, like the attacks in the schools. Over to Martin. I think maybe.
Well, I don't know, it might be obvious, but it kind of ties around to the first question of unity again, because we know that when Trump came in, fascism moved into the White House, and what they do, they burn books, they shut down ideas that don't agree with the establishment ideas. Is this happening in Texas? Is that right, or is this just in America in general?
All over America, okay. But yes, in Texas.
I think, so for example, recently with Salman Rushdie, what happened with Salman Rushdie, or authors like that, when people write books like that, that cause a big uproar. Obviously, anyone sensible would go, no, you don't ban books, you read books. And I think that kind of comes back to what I was saying about unity, is exposing yourself to ideas that are normally different to you or the opposite side. So part of that, what you do is you read books about the opposite side so that you can learn. And reading those books and doing stuff like that is part of uni. So maybe because maybe this sort of fascist American state, that even though Trump's gone, his damage hasn't left the White House. It's still, a lot of the ideas are still there. Maybe it's about breaking down that unity that you can have with the author, with the writer of a certain book. Maybe it's that's what they would want to break down, because again, when you break us down, then we become divided and we're easier to move around if we're just in our own little pockets.
But just focusing on the schools. So how do you feel that bad books have been banned? Nearly 1,500 books have been banned in the last year in America, and that number was fairly similar the year before and the year before, and then number is going upwards. How do you feel about?
I think that just screams of Trump's fascism moving in and shutting down ideas that might be potentially damaging to that establishment, that kind of fascist Trump, right-wing Republican idea, because the opposite ideas scare them. And there's always, like I say, there's always a chance for people to turn around. So this fear that you've got people held in, if they just educate themselves and listen to the other side, they'll start to realize, hang on a minute, we don't have to hate these people. And then the establishment loses some of its power. And by burning books, you're taking away people's ability to learn and grow and become more unified. Which is sort of why I'm circling around to the beginning again in my own little way. Yeah.
So I think you're saying that having more books in schools diverse books is a good idea.
Yeah, you can never get enough books. There's never enough books you can ever read in your lifetime.
Over to you, Khalid. What do you feel about controversial books that are not controversial but appear to be controversial, like books about gay lives and Black Lives Matter? Not Black Lives Matter, but just stories about slavery. Yeah. I mean, Black authors are the highest proportion of authors that get banned in America in schools. That's the highest proportion. That is the highest proportion. And the reason behind that is because they're literally they're disagreeing with the common narrative being taught in schools about, if any, about the Black community and the lives of repression that they've been facing then and today.
Right. So my immediate reaction is that I'm learning about the problem. So you gave me an article before, and what I understood, and the reason why I didn't think it was such a big deal from the article, was a couple of things. One of the books that were banned, and I'm surprised it's in Texas because isn't that part of the Bible? But basically, it was the Bible. It's like, isn't that the part of the Bible Belt, the southern part of America? Yeah. It's like, how does that work? And it was parents who were pushing for this ban. It wasn't the school itself. So that's why I was like, okay, if the parents are pushing for it, I'm not saying that's necessarily right, and this is me just trying to grapple with the reality of the problem. And as I say, I'm learning from you right now. It's like, school can only teach a certain amount, and it has to be some sort of filter. It can't have all the books in the world. Having said that, there are some pretty famous books that probably should be there, the Quran, the Bible, whatever, the ones that are read by millions of billions of people, probably the most popular one. And yes, a diverse number of books. And I suppose it's worth mentioning that if you got you can't expect the teacher to teach everything. But if we're not talking about the teacher teaching everything, but just having those books in the library, I'm all for having a massively diverse amount of diverse variation of books, right? I do think there probably should be some limitation, no pornography, and so, whatever, nothing too explicit. Why do I bring that up? I mean, some people might, in terms of LGBTQ, you know, they might go to the extreme of describing things too detailed, but I'm still up for having their point of view there, even though I don't agree with it. And I think the last point is, because I'm a Muslim and it's what, you brought up the Salman Rushdie, who wrote a book. I think it was it 90s? It's a pretty long time ago.
It was, I think, 1980 something, late 80s, I think.
Oh, okay, late 80s, right? I still remember it when it came out. It's amazing. But and I was born in, okay, I won't say, but yeah, I was pretty young. So my simple point of view and I think most Muslims would agree that you don't stab anybody. You just weakens your point of view by doing that. It's as if you can't answer it. And what he wrote about is incredibly old and a really weak and easily dismantled point of view. So it is like the fact that the Ayatollah, which is this Iranian kind of spiritual leader, which I don't agree with, made what they call a fatwa, which is you can kill this guy. It's like that's completely against Islam, which Islam teaches freedom of conscience and freedom of belief, literally in the Quran. So I don't know how any spiritual leader could stop somebody expressing their point of view when the Quran says they can. So that's my brief point of view on all of that.
Right. Would you like to add your little lovely thoughts to our discussion?
I do have something to say. Basically,
go for it.
It really depends on what books they're banning and which school it is. At high school, at different age groups, primary school and stuff like that. So if you have LGBT books in primary schools, then that's not really good because that's just enforcing ideas on children. But high schools, I would say that's a bit more acceptable because then they can make their own decisions and stuff like that. So it really depends on the age groups and what books.
Yeah, so I mean, these books that are chosen by teachers and heads of where are they? By the board of education states in each state. So these are all officials and educators, and they have deemed that these books have merit because they give a diverse and considerate understanding of these different backgrounds. Yes, we're not going to get a graphic novel for a kindergarten. That's never going to happen. Never has happened, and never will happen. But the idea that gay couples can bring up children, though, I would regard that as not graphic, but actually a reality which has many times proven that just as not to do any couple bring up children. So the books do talk about that, though, and I think that normalising that, because children do get education on the gay community, which is just hate it. So at a very early age, children have been taught in schools to hate people who are different in that respect. So they are already getting an education, but maybe the education I believe in is just more diverse. But you're right, there will be limits. There is, as in America and across Europe and anywhere. So this is a factious concept when people are saying, 5-year-olds are getting graphic material on certain sex. That's not true, never has been. But what is true is talking about it. Even a child can talk about that and present a basic understanding of what mother-father is, or father-father and mother-mother, as a way of, because it's happened throughout all human history. So yeah, just banning books. Anyone like anything? I feel that banning books that are appropriate, which have already been deemed appropriate, is the people behind, as I was saying, the people of fund, because these are not grassroots. These are grassroots that get these books banned, but these grassroots are funded by Catholic organisations and Republicans, which are Catholic.
I just want to do my usual thing that I'm going to say, Dust. So obviously, Christians, lovely people. When we say Catholic or Christian leadership. These are people behaving unchristianly, more capitalistically, because I would say Christian means to be loving. I mean, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, but the caveat here is that unfortunately, our Catholic leadership is telling their community what they call, by the way, sheep, patronising.
Oh, really interesting.
They call it their sheep, and it infers that they do whatever they're told, which is so that your leadership is in your Catholic leadership. Very dismissive of you as a human being, let alone whatever religion you seem to follow, even if
don't they just say flock, not sheep?
The flock is, yes, they also say sheep, flock, and they also have one of those shepherd hook things used to hook up sheep. That is symbolic, and the Christian Catholic Church really roll with that. How proud they are of their contempt for the people that they claim to be the moral guardians of. Yeah. There is a very weird relationship going on there in the Catholic Church.
Because it can be meant in two different ways. Like in my understanding, spiritual leaders, they're all shepherds of their people, but they're not really calling. I'm not disagreeing with. It could be in certain instances they're basically calling their followers sheep, as in mindless people, but it also often means just people, sheep as in, I don't know if they actually say sheep, but they often say people who are part of, under the caretaking of a spiritual leader in a nice way as well. I'm just saying there's two ways of talking about it. Yeah.
In the West, it is just one of content.
Would you use the word sheep? Yeah. Okay.
And when I talk to people of the Christian faith, that relationship, what I've just described, is clearly evident. It's just that if you're born into that society, we're going off topic here. Born into that culture and that community. There's no other choices. It's not like you can just run along and be a Muslim. All right, recently that we've had more choice, which is brilliant and beautiful. But it's only until very recently in the West. If you had no choice, then you're ostracized, repressed, abused, laughed at, and not allowed part of the community, which means not being able to go to the social groups, the schools, the church. And then if you do turn up, then the vicar or priest will abuse you. I know lots of Christians that have that experience, and they still go though, because, well, that's their own concern. But so back to the banning. This is a fanatical religious group, the Catholic leadership, which is trying to dictate the breakdown of the community by denying young children, young adults, a breadth of different views about reality and a critical thinking, which is absolutely essential, I believe. And one of the books also were banned was a Holocaust book, which is absolutely disturbing that anyone could justify banning a Holocaust book. It was a book which was Anne Frank's, an interpretation of Anne Frank's book, and it was a comic book. So the reason why I suspect that was particularly targeted is because comic books, one of the great things about comic books is they're accessible to people that can't really read, like myself. I can't really I have chronic reading problems. And so I think they thought, oh dear, this book has a lot of things about the Holocaust and possibly even touched upon the Catholic Church role in the Holocaust. Maybe we need to get that one out because everyone can pick that up and absorb it, learn from it and grow from that and develop critical thinking. Right. What else would any of you anybody, you three, sorry, I just lost a person there. You three would like to criticize what I've said, because that would be brilliant. I think that criticism, what I've just said, is essential. Maybe us here, maybe comments below can do that. Criticize what I said. I think that's healthy and brilliant. So open to you, or you may agree. Open to any who wants to go.
I think about some more before I comment.
Otherwise, I'm happy to, if there's no other contribution to be made, I'd hand it back to you to round up the evening.
We don't. Oh, okay. You want to drop the last question for next time? It's up to you.
All right. Well,
I feel bad if I.
All right. We'll be very brief on this. It's more of a statement than. So yeah, the last question is the Church and addicted to oil? They have just invested billions. Not just, they have constantly been investing billions into the oil industry for their pensions and for making gross profits out of a material substance, which is clearly, as in even these oil companies know that they've been killing the planet for at least 40 years. So they're addicted to oil, addicted to the money, because I do know the Church of England is also addicted to fracking. They've been pushing Parliament politically to introduce relaxed fracking laws into the UK. I've been to Parliament myself, to one of these lobbying meetings that they have there. I call it lobbying. These meetings in Parliament. I reckon we should all go to Parliament, by the way.
Yeah, we cool.
We should do a video. We probably won't have to video there, but we can do a post reflection there. We should all do that. It'd be great. So I've been to Parliament and I've seen the Church of England, playing both sides of the game. They're saying, "Oh, we're environmentally friendly," but actually, we actually own lots of land in this country, and fracking is going to make us very, very rich. And Saudi Arabia as well, which is another royalty, because the Church of England is connected to the royal family here in the UK, by the way. Saudi Arabia is also addicted to oil, and brings horrific, I think wealth on that level is horrific. But we're talking about billions here. Millions, I'm happy with people being millionaires. I think that's nothing wrong with that. And we should be rewarded for the good work that we do. When it comes to billions, though, and then trillions, because since the 70s, the oil companies across the world, UK, America, Saudi Arabia, Germany, etc., all these major oil companies have made trillions of pounds, 52 trillions to be exact, of pure profit since the 70s. And how's the world? Oh, it's dying because of the oil companies. So why is our religious institutions making hell on earth and then selling us the idea of heaven? There is an intriguing relationship there. Maybe they're a little bit more biased because I'm just throwing that question out there. It's a bit abstract, but maybe it's something that we can pick up on next time. But yeah, Church of England, addicted to oil, they will not let go. And yet we all know that the hell pollution that oil's making. Anyone like to add to this?
Oil is useful though.
Yep, go on.
Like lots of people use oil. Not everywhere in this world currently has oil. There might be some more rural areas that still need oil. So that could be good for that. And they're preaching about heaven, which is not actually on earth. So you can suffer a bit on earth since your life is really short, in comparison to everything else. So you suffer a bit and then you can enjoy heaven afterwards. So maybe that's why they're not paying that much attention to the earth.
I'll just say two things. Oh no, go on. Were you going to respond first?
I just want to correct. You've identified it correctly, by the way, that you need oil to function. The only reason that reality exists is because all the infrastructure that we use, like cars, petrol cars, which are called ICE engines, by the way, internal combustion engine, ICE engines and coal and power stations were all put into place by the oil companies. They decided that all our infrastructure should be built for them, purposely for them, so they can make those trillions of pounds I've just described. Because what they would never do and have never done is invest in solar and wind, etc. And if we'd done that 100 years ago, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But what the conversation we're having right now is, well, wouldn't it be funny if we used oil instead of renewables? Because think of the world we'd live on. If it was all done by oil, it'd be polluted and dying and being burnt by a couple of rich kids with trillions of pounds. Can't imagine a world like that ever happening. Thank God. Thank humanity we went to solar. We would have been. That's the conversation we'd be having now. But then you wouldn't have a couple of rich kids who own and dominate and control our religions, all our religions, not just Christianity, but all of them. So it seems like that addiction between oil and the Church of England seems to be a bit more now described. Obviously, it's a little bit more complicated, but not that much.
Yeah, I feel like I might as well jump in a little bit. I mean, you were not mentioning Islam, even though you should be, because Saudi Arabia does have the most oil in the world, and they consider themselves Muslims. And as I mentioned before, I don't really a lot of people don't really consider the Saudi royal family, or are they called royal? Whatever they are called.
Yeah, called royal.
Are they royal? Yeah. So yeah, because they're princes, of course, princes and kings. I don't know how I could forget that. But anyway, most people don't really consider themselves particularly religious because they break really fundamental Islamic laws, like they drink alcohol and they gamble and all sorts of things, and quite openly. But I do agree that there shouldn't be these billionaires and trillionaires. They should be spreading their wealth amongst the people, their people, because that oil is not their oil. You know, it's not like their land suddenly just because they're a royal family or something. So I totally agree with that. I don't think they're behaving like Muslims. And another interesting point Saleh made, my son, about this idea of sacrificing your experience of this world for heaven in the next world. That's actually against the Islamic teaching, because the Islamic teaching is that if you are happy in this life, if you find a sense of paradise in this life, that's evidence of what your soul will continue into the next life. So you should have a happy life in this life. That doesn't mean, actually I won't go into it, but that's the summary of what I'd like to say, because I know the show's gone way overboard because we've had such a fantastic time. But yes,
I think what you're saying there is fascinating. So if we do have a little bit more time, I would like that dialogue to continue.
I mean, you can tell me what bit is interesting for you particularly, but I would just say, but the thing I was going to add in, it's not the kind of happiness that you get from drugs or something. It's the long-lasting happiness of being kind to people. And so the Islamic point of view is that there are different stages of, let's say, evolution. We've already gone through a couple of stages before we got to the human life, which is the sperm and the egg. That was a lower form of existence, and then you went to a multicellular thing until you became a baby, and then when you were a baby in the womb, you thought that was the universe, and then you went to a bigger universe called the universe we're existing in now in terms of consciousness, and that will continue even in the next life. So each stage we think is a death, like a baby thing. I think I'm getting overboard now. I think let me home in to the idea of so because when I start talking I kind of go on. So in short, I'm trying to say is that you continue. So what affects you in one stage, you continue it with your, in some essence, to the next stage of your development. So like a baby, if your mother's smoking, that baby gets affected, and it takes that from the womb to outside the womb, which is another experience, but it takes that. So what you do, if you behave badly, that affects your soul, and that is the essence that continues to the next stage. Which bit was that interesting? I'm not sure what part you found particularly interesting.
I find it interesting that reality today is very important. I think that's definitely not in Christianity. In Christianity, definitely the next experience, which is the thing to experience. And actually, possibly a good question for one of our future things. What is the political framework of Christian heaven? I think that would be a very good question to have next time.
Yeah. Yeah, and my as from an Islamic point of view, well, I say Islamic point of view, my Islamic point of view of Christianity is that I don't believe in modern day Christianity. I believe in the Christianity of Jesus, which you'd be shocked to believe is completely different to what Christians are taught now. But that's a whole different thing.
Can I just add
Yes.
one little bit? I think I was just going to say, I think there's a danger. So for me, as an atheist, or so I used to be I was a Christian in a sense. So when you see the world as a Christian, you see the world as this is just a stopgap. You're only preparing to get to the paradise, to heaven, the big reward. At the end, this life you live now, when you die, it's okay because there's better things coming, or worse things coming. But hopefully, better things coming for you. Once I left that, and I could say now I'm an atheist. You see, now that you go, you don't believe in anything after this. You go, well, now life is far more amazing. Well, now life is far more valuable. So now I value every day that I'm here. Where maybe in a Christian teaching, there isn't as much value for what happens to the climate. Why does it matter? Because you're going to die. You're going to a better place. It doesn't matter what happens on this planet, or to what happens to the people that are left behind. It doesn't matter because you're only working to achieve this paradise, this Valhalla, whatever. Whereas me as an atheist, I'm aware that this is the only planet I exist on. If the climate is screwed, we're all screwed. It doesn't matter what you're all screwed. And
Sure.
I think I've got more stake in serving humanity and serving community and things like that. So I can say.
Just say that is very beautiful and profound. Thank you for that. So can I just ask a question to everyone here? And the question is it hypocritical for our religious institutions to be making gross profit out of oil?
I would say completely.
I would say both in, like, to quote Jesus, it was like, he said, like, it's harder for, I'm gonna look at my quote because I know the quote, but I want to quote it properly.
While you're doing that, your son can give his view
But
on
I've
it.
got it here. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, which is gay. That's literally Jesus. If you followed that, that's the answer to your question. You can't go to heaven if you're rich, basically. So, and Islam teaches something very similar. It basically says it's a massive burden to be rich because you've got to spend it really well on poor people. But that's the short answer to your question.
And the last, what do you think of that question? Yes or no? Or something in between?
Nowadays, it will be hypocritical. Long time ago, now when oil was more of a new thing, I would say it wasn't that bad because you couldn't really see the effects as much as you can see it now. So nowadays, yes, it is hypocritical. But back then, I think it was all right.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to conclude that session of ideas, talks, and questions. And I think we've all of us here. Our new speaker has been exceptional. You've been exceptional, and obviously Khalid and me, we're just things, things. We're brilliant things.
Thank you.
I hope. And we're so I think we've just had a wonderful an hour and 30 minutes almost of engaging, constructive, deconstructive analysis of the world about us, and all of us, I believe, clearly are demonstrating great nobility in our reasonings and disagreements with each other and the way that's manifested. And we should all be very proud of ourselves, and long may this continue.
Thank you very much, Dust. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your time. Appreciate it so much. And I'm just going to end it there without saying any more. So stop talking.
Just go.